What if I told you that The Omen was never just a horror movie? What if the character of Damien Thorn wasn't born from a screenwriter's imagination, but was instead a carefully engineered cover story, built to bury something real? Something that certain powerful institutions have spent decades making sure you'd never piece together. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the story they buried, the one that was never supposed to reach you. It begins in Rome, June 6th, 1946. That date would eventually become shorthand for cinematic evil, but long before it appeared on any movie poster, it marked the arrival of a child whose existence would set off a chain of events across continents and decades. His name wasn't Damien, not then. According to documents locked inside Vatican archives under a seal that doesn't expire until 2067, he was born under the name Robert Thorn, no connection to the fictional diplomat from the film. That parallel, as you'll come to understand, was not accidental. The birth was registered at a small private clinic on the outskirts of Rome, a facility that burned to the ground 3 weeks later. Every record inside it, destroyed. Every member of staff present at the delivery, all 7 of them, were dead within 18 months. A hit and run, a drowning, a gas leak, a fall. Investigators found nothing connecting the deaths. Officially, coincidences. Nothing to see here. Move along. The infant was taken in by an American diplomat based in Italy, a detail the film would later mirror closely. What it changed were the names and the circumstances. According to files declassified in 1998 and almost immediately resealed, the adoption was brokered by a Vatican official named Cardinal Stephen Valente. He was found dead in his private chambers not long after his throat was cut with what forensics described as surgical precision, performed with a tool they couldn't identify. The case was never solved. It remains open to this day. By 1947, the Thorn family had relocated to Washington, D.C. For the next 5 years, nothing made it into any official record. But the family's housekeeper, a woman named Maria Cletti, kept a private journal. Those entries, recovered in 2007 when workers pulled apart the walls of her sister's home during renovations, tell a different story. Animals found mutilated on the property. The child speaking in his sleep in languages he had never been taught. Room temperatures dropping sharply whenever he entered. Maria disappeared in 1952. Her sister insisted for decades that she'd simply return to Italy. There are no immigration records to support that. No letters, no calls, no trace. The first death directly linked to Robert occurred on his 5th birthday. A photographer hired to document the party was found hanging from an oak tree in the Thorn family garden the following morning. The official ruling: suicide. The photographer had just been promoted. He had purchased an engagement ring the day before. The photographs from the party were never recovered. By age 7, Robert was enrolled at St. Matthew's Academy, a private school in Virginia. 3 teachers requested immediate transfers during his first semester. Dr. James Lell abandoned education entirely and admitted himself to a psychiatric facility in Maryland. His admission paperwork, obtained via a Freedom of Information Act request in 2012, contains obsessive repeated references to the boy's eyes and what Lell called the darkness living behind them. He died in that facility 90 days later. Self-inflicted wounds, 37 of them. A pattern was forming. No one was connecting the dots, at least not officially. The family's wealth and diplomatic status made sure investigations never went anywhere. Problems were managed. People disappeared. In 1955, a fire broke out in the chapel at St. Matthew's during a Christmas service. Robert, 9 years old, was listed on the attendance sheet, but notably absent from the building. 5 children died. Faulty wiring, investigators concluded. The school's maintenance logs for the preceding 3 years were never located. The following year, the Thorn family relocated to London. State Department memos, heavily redacted but partially legible through FOIA requests, suggest the move was quietly recommended following incidents requiring geographical distance from prior environments. No further details were provided. In London, Robert attended Harrow School. His academic file noted exceptional intelligence alongside what one instructor called an unsettling absence of normal emotional response. 3 students who shared his dormitory were treated for severe night terrors. One was never discharged. He remained institutionalized until his suicide in 1972. A groundskeeper named William Jennings kept a personal log during his time at Harrow. His entries from 1957 to 1959 describe animals found ritualistically arranged across the school grounds, always in areas Robert had been seen the previous day. Jennings was dismissed for alcoholism in 1959. His body was pulled from the Thames River 3 weeks later. Death by drowning. Alcohol in his system. Case closed. The family returned to Washington in 1960. Robert, now 14, had grown into something else entirely charismatic, commanding, unnervingly persuasive. His inner circle was composed exclusively of children from influential families, senators' sons, media heirs, the offspring of industrial dynasties. They called themselves the Assembly, a detail uncovered decades later in the private correspondence of Senator William Harrington's son, Michael. Michael Harrington died in a boating accident in 1962. His personal effects, including letters detailing the Assembly's activities, were logged into evidence and scheduled for return to his family. They never arrived. When questioned in 1997, the officer who signed the chain of custody documentation had no memory of the items existing. By 1965, Assembly members had embedded themselves in the most prestigious academic institutions in the world: Harvard, Yale, Oxford. Internal communications later discovered inside a storage unit rented under a false name reveal a coordinated effort to infiltrate specific university departments: political science, religious studies, archaeology, media, and communications. Not for academic achievement, for positioning. Robert himself enrolled at Harvard, where he studied ancient civilizations and religious mythology. His thesis advisor, Dr. Eleanor Chambers, grew increasingly alarmed by his fixation on apocalyptic prophecy and ancient fertility cults. She began documenting her concerns privately, sending copies to a colleague at Princeton. Both died within a month of each other in 1968. Different states, different causes, same outcome. Robert's thesis was never filed in Harvard's archives. A comprehensive search conducted in 2001 found no record of its submission, despite Chambers' notes explicitly referencing its completion. What it contained can only be reconstructed from fragments of her private writings, disturbing parallels between Sumerian fertility rites and modern power structures. Troubling interpretations of Revelation 13, a personal theory about bloodline inheritance that Chambers described in her final note as something I wish I had never read. After Harvard, Robert vanished from public records entirely for 3 years. No employment history, no travel documents, no financial transactions. A ghost, but not an inactive one. Witnesses would later place him in Rome, Jerusalem, and Baghdad, always accompanied by Assembly members, always gaining access to sites normally closed to the public. And he resurfaced in 1974, taking a role at a prominent think tank with close ties to the State Department. His specialty: religious conflict and power dynamics in developing nations. Within 2 years, he had shaped policy recommendations for 6 countries. Each one experienced unprecedented civil unrest within months of implementing those recommendations. Thousands died. Power structures realigned. Ancient artifacts vanished from museums and private collections. Robert Thorn cycled through advisory roles, think tanks, and private consultancies. Never visible, always close to power. Governments changed. Conflicts erupted. Religious tensions flared in precisely the regions where he focused his attention. Officials called it coincidence, statistical noise. Meanwhile, Assembly members continued to move into place across media, finance, education, government, like threads being drawn tight across an invisible loom. Then, in 1975, something unexpected happened. A screenwriter named David Seltzer submitted a horror film script about a demonic child named Damien Thorn adopted in Rome, surrounded by mysterious deaths, raised by a powerful diplomat. The parallels to Robert's real life were not subtle. The adoption in Rome, the chain of deaths, the influential father figure, details that had never been made public appearing on screen as entertainment. Production on the film was plagued by incidents, lightning strikes, equipment failures, an animal handler found dead in circumstances eerily mirroring the fictional character's demise. The mainstream press framed these as clever publicity. Industry insiders were less casual about it. After the film's release, Robert Thorn legally changed his name. Court records of the change were sealed by judicial order. His new identity has never been confirmed, though forensic analysis of signature patterns and writing style suggests he assumed no fewer than 3 separate personas between 1976 and 1990. Seltzer himself became increasingly reclusive. In rare interviews, he deflected all questions about the story's origin, attributing it to research and imagination. In 1981, he told a reporter from the Los Angeles Times that he sometimes felt the story had found him, rather than the other way around. The reporter's unpublished notes, obtained after her death in 1999, include this addendum. Seltzer seemed genuinely frightened. When I asked if he had ever encountered anyone who inspired the character, he wouldn't answer. He kept looking over my shoulder during the entire interview. Throughout the 1980s, Assembly-affiliated foundations funded archaeological expeditions targeting specific sites cited in ancient apocalyptic texts. Artifacts recovered during these expeditions rarely appeared in any museum catalog. Documentation of the discoveries regularly vanished from university archives. In 1989, a Columbia University researcher named Dr. Sarah Keller began connecting these disappearances. Her notes detail an organized effort to locate and remove specific classes of objects sharing symbolic links to end times prophecies across multiple religious traditions. She died in a house fire shortly after. Faulty wiring, yet investigators concluded her research was destroyed. Backups she had distributed to colleagues were reported stolen or lost within weeks of her death. A colleague, Dr. Marcus Reed, continued her work in secret. His body was found at his desk in 1991. Single self-inflicted gunshot wound. No note. Case closed. In 1996, investigative journalist Peter Kaufman received an anonymous package containing photocopied documents connecting Robert Thorn to multiple unexplained deaths and evidence of his ongoing activities under a new identity. 3 months into his investigation, his apartment was broken into. Only his computer and research notes were taken. Kaufman disappeared 2 weeks later while following a lead in Chicago. An encrypted backup, set to deliver automatically to a colleague after a period of inactivity, arrived corrupted beyond recovery. Only fragments remained, including repeated references to the child grown to man and preparation for the appointed time. In 2001, a graduate student researching online religious communities stumbled upon a server backup from one of the early internet forums moderated by Assembly members. The private messages between moderators confirmed that Robert, referred to only as RT, remained active under a new identity. The messages referenced a coming convergence and preparations underway for 2026. The student, Miguel Santana, published his findings in an academic journal. The article was retracted within days, methodological concerns cited. His advisors withdrew their support. His funding was canceled. His university access was revoked. He returned to Mexico and abandoned his research entirely. In 2005, leaked internal emails from a prominent think tank revealed discussions about historical sites requiring special attention before the anniversary. The locations corresponded exactly to sites associated with ancient fertility cults and apocalyptic prophecies, the very subjects of Robert Thorn's missing Harvard thesis. Journalists who pursued the story ran into classified barriers, closed excavation sites, and sources who suddenly stopped returning calls. In 2017, a retired Vatican archivist named Father Paolo Rinaldi gave an interview to an Italian documentary filmmaker. He described sealed files related to a birth in Rome in 1946, sealed, he said, by direct papal order. The interview was never broadcasted. The filmmaker's equipment was stolen the following morning. Father Rinaldi suffered a stroke 1 week later and never recovered the ability to speak. In 2020, a data analyst named Christopher Way built an algorithm to map connections between seemingly unrelated events, individuals, and institutions. His results corresponded precisely to everything we now understand as the assembly communication patterns, resource flows, coordinated activities, all pointing toward December 2026. His preliminary paper was uploaded to an academic server in February of 2021. It was downloaded 347 times before the server experienced a catastrophic failure, losing all data. Backup systems went down simultaneously. Wei's personal devices were compromised the same night. He requested a leave of absence the following week. His colleagues described him as visibly anxious, unlike himself. His final email sent to his sister before he vanished read, "If something happens to me, remember this. Patterns don't lie. They're preparing for something. December 21st, 2026. I've seen too much. Don't look for me." His sister reported him missing 3 days later. The investigation remains open. In 2023, a former security contractor who had provided protection for assembly-affiliated excavations in Iraq, Turkey, and Egypt came forward anonymously. He described artifacts recovered and never cataloged, sealed containers transported under diplomatic protection, infrastructure being constructed at each site. "They're building something," he said. "Something that connects these locations. Something that requires specific astronomical conditions to activate." The contractor disappeared shortly after his testimony was recorded. Astronomical calculations confirm that a rare planetary alignment will occur on December 21st, 2026, the winter solstice. The same date appears across multiple ancient texts describing the rise of a figure born of both human and supernatural lineage. Is it coincidence that Hollywood has announced a new Omen franchise reboot scheduled for release in June 2026? Is it coincidence that assembly-connected foundations have recently redirected funding towards 7 specific archaeological sites mentioned in Sumerian end times texts? Is it coincidence that private security firms linked to assembly members have quietly acquired land surrounding each of those sites? There are no coincidences in this story, only patterns waiting to be seen by someone willing to look. The fictional Damien Thorn was constructed for a purpose to fold the truth into entertainment, to make you dismiss the real pattern as something you already know from a horror film. It worked. For decades, it worked perfectly. But fiction can't contain reality forever. The edges begin to bleed. Robert Thorn, or whatever name he answers to now, has spent his entire life moving toward a single moment. December 21st, 2026 is not just a date on a calendar. Based on everything that's been recovered, suppressed, destroyed, and pieced back together, it appears to represent the culmination of a plan set in motion in Rome 80 years ago. You don't have to believe me, not yet. Just watch. Pay attention to the archaeological announcements in the months ahead. Notice which researchers go quiet, which stories vanish from platforms overnight, which sites suddenly close for unplanned restoration. Watch for the convergence of threads that, individually, mean nothing but together, form something unmistakable. The truth behind Damien Thorn isn't finished. It's still unfolding. And now, whether you choose this or not, you're part of it. We all are. December 21st, 2026. Mark the date. If this story stayed with you, leave a like. Tell me in the comments what story I should uncover next, and subscribe, because some stories don't stay buried forever.